Good afternoon, everyone. So lovely to have you all here today, both in person and also virtually. Before I hand over to Sean, who's going to run our exciting panel today, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional landowners on the land on which we meet, the Darug people. I would also like to pay my respect to elders past and present. So now I'd like to hand over to Sean, who is going to run our exciting panel for us today. Thank you.
Hi everyone, really excited to have you all here with us this afternoon panel chat. Just because of the lineup of guests, they have really interesting stories, both here on the stage and Cody, who's virtually there, but we'll introduce everybody. But for anyone who doesn't know, my name's Sean White. I'm a consumer correspondent at Sunrise. I've been a journalist for over 10 years, but in my current role, I sort of look at, I guess, how we live our lives as consumers, everything from property to personal finance, travel, but my favorite is tech. And I guess that's underpinned by innovation and how it fits into our lives as consumers right now and also looking forward. But one of the brands I work with a lot is LG. And the first guest I'd like to introduce, many of you would know, a familiar face, LG's marketing director, Gemma Lemieux.
Hey.
And then next is someone who has just a phenomenal story, Em Carey. She is the girl who fell from the sky, half the height of Mount Everest. It's an incredible story. Em, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And then, of course, a man who I think can do it all in the water and on the ground or at a concert. He is LG's ambassador for Life's Good Optimism. He is a, I guess, professional singer turned competitive athlete. Please welcome Cody Simpson. Just to sort of set the tone for today, I just wanted to read something about innovation and optimism, but more specifically optimism. Our panelists all have incredible stories to share, and I think we can learn a lot from them and their experiences. Much like the stories we're going to hear today, we've all had our own versions of difficult times and had to overcome something in our lives. When we look more broadly in the world we live in, there are a lot of challenges, darkness and negativity being faced by people today, every day. And there is some of that in our personal lives too. But history has always told us that in the face of adversity, optimism is the catalyst for any sort of change. In the past, every great and difficult thing accomplished required a strong sense of optimism that it was possible. Optimism, though, is not a guarantee. Just because we believe something will happen does not mean it will happen. But if we do not believe in the possibility of something better, then nothing will ever change. We hope that through this panel session, we're able to delve a little bit deeper into optimism, the process of it, and sort of this enlightened search for embracing change and fueling the future. So anyway, that's a lot to unpack, Gemma. How would you say this has sort of, I guess, influenced the new campaign?
Yeah, definitely. You're exactly right, Sean. For us, Life's Good is more than just a slogan. It's our brand promise. It's really guided everything we've done from a brand perspective since its introduction back in 1999. In fact, a really nice fact is that Life's Good was developed here in Australia. Yay! Through some local research, the term Life's Good really defined Australian zest for life, which I guess everyone has here. And the essence of those words really did transcend geographically. As humans, we can really relate to the meaning behind Life's Good.
Has it always been, I guess, easy to carry that Life's Good message, I guess, when you consider everything that's going on in the world?
Yes, definitely, 100%. I think the idea of it is important and more important during times of challenge and times of struggle. You said it yourself, when you think of optimism, you're looking for the light when there's a lot of dark around you. And the message of Life's Good is all about inspiring and encouraging people, especially young people, to really embrace the idea of being optimistic in their everyday lives and having an optimistic attitude, giving them and uplifting them and creating those really important influences in their day and in their lives.
You mentioned young people, of course. Why was that such a big focus?
Well, Gen Z is a very big focus for us as a brand, as it is for many other brands. I mean, they are our future, but they face a very difficult intersection in their lives. They live with these very powerful tools in their pocket that they use to connect, communicate and build relationships with. And is this a good thing? I don't think so, not always. They're also influenced by lives that they see playing out in social media and feeling that they need to constantly reinvent themselves to live up to those trends that they're seeing in social media. They also feel really deeply about the environment and they take that on really personally as well, which, you know, all of that is really, really hard to unpack for the young generation. On top of that, they're trying to work out who they want to be as a person, their career, where they want to live, their finances. So, you know, with all of this going on, I think this generation more than any really could do with a way that they can actually redefine and create their own path and their own happy and fulfilled life.
Yeah, and with LG's brand reinvention, would you say that was a big motivation?
Yeah, definitely a big part of it. I think part of our reinvention is about returning to some of our core values, our uncompromising customer service and our human-centric innovation, alongside the rollout of our dynamic and vibrant new brand identity that you see here today and you've been seeing across the last year as well. We want to ensure that our optimistic perspective is deeply rooted in everything that we do as a brand. And as our products are part of everyone's everyday exposure, it's important that that's seeded in the everyday as well. We want to extend that not only to Gen Zs, but to all of our customers and consumers to refine that zest for life. And I think given that we started Life's Good right here in Australia, it's only fitting that we take our brand to the next level.
Yes, speaking of the next level, it's a fitting way to introduce our next two panellists, two people with two very different stories, but united by resilience and embracing change. Let's have a look.
Thank you, Eddie. Well, he's a superstar singer turned world-class athlete, and now Cody Simpson's eyes are firmly set on the Olympic dream.
But it hasn't always been easy. Cody sat down with Sunrise correspondent Tamara Bowe and opened up about the mental toll of transitioning from the stage to the pool and his latest project.
Challenge. Such a small word to describe a big leap. At age 13, I took on the challenge of becoming a musician from a swimmer. And 10 years on, I'm now known as a musician and will continue to be known so. No, the game has only just begun.
You like my favorite song on the radio. I can listen to you all day.
From Aussie pop god to king of the pool, 26-year-old Cody Simpson is the Gold Coast singer turned swimmer that's faced more than his fair share of challenges during his very public transition. Putting his guitar aside 3.5 years ago, he's been laser focused on his swimming career ever since.
Take Elbar. I am now 26 and have come back to the water to test myself yet again as an Australian national team swimmer. How far will my strength take me? I don't know. But I love my challenge-driven life. Life's good.
Well, it is the stuff of nightmares. Just imagine the feeling of a skydiving adventure going horribly wrong. Your parachute doesn't open and plummeting kilometres to the ground.
It is exactly what happened to our next guest, Emma Carey. But her miracle survival is just the start of her story.
You gotta take it day by day. Keep moving.
It was the moment her life changed forever. 9 years ago, Em Carey was fulfilling a lifelong dream to go skydiving in the Swiss Alps. But after jumping from the helicopter, her excitement turned to terror as her parachute tangled and she fell 15,000 feet or 4.5 kilometres to the ground.
Yeah, what a story. Em, we've been sitting here talking about optimism. When you woke up in the hospital facing the prospect of never walking again, that's a very different headspace to be in, and one that feels a million miles away from any sort of positivity. I think when we talk about optimism and powering a better life for ourselves, what we really are looking at is that journey from darkness into light and how that defines us more than our worst moments. What was the starting point on that journey for you?
Yeah, first of all, how awkward watching just a montage of myself. I definitely didn't wake up optimistic when I realised I was paralysed. For the first week, I was devastated, and I think I was just in this state of shock, trying to wrap my head around being this 20-year-old girl who was travelling the world to the next minute being paralysed in a hospital bed, not really being able to speak the same language as the doctors. And so I kind of was just trying to catch up with my new reality. But I remember about a week later, I woke up one morning and something in me just felt different. Physically, everything was the same. My legs were still paralysed. I still had a catheter bag draining from me, and nothing had changed. But I think that haze of shock had just worn off, and I suddenly understood that what had happened. And despite how much I wanted to take it back, there was nothing I could do to take it back. And if there was nothing I could do, it seemed pretty pointless to spend all of my time that I had desperately longed for as I was falling, wishing for things to change. And so it became pretty clear to me early on that I had two choices. I could either be paralysed and miserable, or I could be paralysed and at least try to create a fulfilling life regardless. And either way, I couldn't change my injury or what had happened, but the one thing that I could change was my perspective. And it seems so cheesy that's, changing your perspective can change your life, but it's so true. I realised I'd been focusing entirely on what I had lost, which was a lot, but when I allowed myself to take a step back, I could see that there was so much I still had. I had the use of my hands and the rest of my body, something I'd never taken a moment to be thankful for, something that being in a spinal ward became really clear to me that I was really lucky to still have. I had incredible healthcare, people around me who loved me. And then I remember asking myself if I could even take it one step further and ask myself if there's actually anything I'd gained from the situation. And only a week in, it definitely didn't feel like it, but there really was. I had gained that appreciation for my body and my life. And above all, I had gained this knowledge that I somehow survived something impossible. You said before that it was like half the height of Mount Everest, which I'd never stopped to think about before. That's just crazy. So I have no idea how or why I survived that, but I knew that I owed it to myself to find out.
Yeah, and I guess when you look back at those videos and montages, does it show you how resilient you've been from there to where you are today?
Yeah, it's funny. In the moment, it didn't really feel like that. I felt like I was just kind of doing what I needed to do. It didn't really seem like there was another option. But now that's all about 10 years ago, all those videos. And you never really know how young you are at the time, right? And so I didn't feel like I was that young. But when I look back now, I'm like, 20 is just a baby. And so I feel really proud of my past self for getting through that. But at the time, it just felt like, what other choice is there than to put one foot in front of the other, literally, but metaphorically.
Yeah, thank you. Cody, we're talking about the starting point of our journeys. The point optimism, I guess, fueled the change. You've had a successful singing career, but when was the moment you decided you wanted to change, and why? You've had a great career that many people would dream of. Why was it more important, I guess, for you to take this risk?
Thanks, Sean. Yeah, I think growing up, having started and been given an opportunity to pursue music so young, I took that chance without really sort of analyzing it or thinking about it too much at that age, and was sort of hopped on this roller coaster ride that didn't stop for the better part of 10 years. And I absolutely loved every moment of it. And then I got to an age, and it was right around, I think, the Rio Olympics, so 7 years ago now, that I went to the games and watched a few friends of mine swim that I grew up competing against, and it sort of lit a fire in my belly. It reminded me of that first love I had in the pool, and that never left me from that point on, and it sort of slowly grew within me until it was, at a point, a burning point, I guess you might say, that I couldn't ignore it anymore and wanted to pursue that. And whilst I was still young enough to have a crack, and I'm just the kind of person that I don't want to look back on my life with any what ifs or regrets. And if I feel that I have potential in something and love for something, I'm curious and want to understand what that is and try and fulfill that to the best of my ability. So when I came back to the pool, it was just the risk that I felt was necessary to take in order to live with no regrets in the future.
Yeah, and now that you've obviously shifted into this, ultra competitive landscape, and you look at sort of what you've done so far, do you see how that optimism fueled you to get to where you are right now?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. When I first started back, it was about 3 to 3.5 years ago now when I started training again after having not swum more than a lap or two for about 10 years. I think I possessed probably a bit of a blind overconfidence in the beginning, but that's sort of what I think pushed me and drove me into having enough confidence and optimism to at least get started. I quickly realized how difficult it was going to be to get to where I wanted to get to, but the optimism part was so important and still is so important for me to get through those sort of really tough weeks, months, even years of hard training that we have to go through. And I think having that sense of optimism daily is a necessity, I suppose, more than a luxury at this point. But it's certainly helped me get to where I am now in the sport in a short period of time, I suppose, from a larger point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, Gemma, listening to Cody speak, it's obvious why LG has selected him as an ambassador for the campaign. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely. LG globally have partnered with some incredible people that really embody the spirit of brave optimists, really kind of confidently carving out their own individual path, including American actress Willow Smith and Nigerian Korean model Jenny Park. And in Australia, we're absolutely delighted to partner with Cody for this campaign because of his fearless approach, as you've just heard from him, in creating his own happy and fulfilled life. And that's really what Life's Good message is all about. We want people to use this campaign to really take inspiration for their own lives.
Speaking of inspiration, Em, you've been a source of inspiration for many people who've been facing their own challenges. I mean, through your recovery, was there anyone who sort of gave you advice?
There was a lot of people, but it's funny, the first kind of moment of advice, I don't think it was really meant to be advice, more tough love, but it was probably a day or so before that wake-up call I had in hospital, that week into the accident. I remember I couldn't really sleep at night, and I remember every night I would see a nurse just sitting at the end of my bed, and she or another nurse was there all day, every day. And I thought, why are they here? And because of the language barrier, I didn't really kind of bother asking. But then one night when I couldn't sleep, I thought, might as well strike up a conversation, not much else to do. So I said to her, like, why are you in my room? It's okay, you can go and look on other patients. I'm fine, I'm just laying here. And she said to me, well, I'm not allowed to leave. You're on suicide watch. And I was really taken aback by that because I never saw myself in that way. But when I thought about it, I realized I was a risk, I guess. I kept pulling out the cannulas in my hands. I kept trying to push myself off the bed and onto the floor. And from the moment the paramedics arrived at the field where I landed, I was telling everyone to leave me alone because I didn't want their help. I just wanted them to let me die because I didn't feel like I was capable of going through something like this. But when she said that to me, and she kind of said it with an annoyed tone too, and she let me know, she said, there's many people in this hospital that need my attention far more than you. There's many people who are far more injured or sick or whatever it is than you, and my help would be much better over there. And I think when you're in a situation like I was, everyone kind of treats you really gently and doesn't want to say anything to upset you because you're like in this really fragile place. So I think hearing someone give me that tough love was actually what I needed, because I guess being 20, everything that happens to you kind of feels like the only thing in the world. And so I needed that perspective of, okay, I am very lucky to still be alive. I am very lucky to have all the function that I still have, and it's not the end of the world. I'm going to be okay. So yeah, sometimes tough love is what you need.
Yeah, and I think, sometimes in life it seems like we just put in the work and then we sail off into the sunset. There's no setbacks, but it's obviously never like that. Was there ever a time when your optimism that you remember was really challenged?
Yeah, and not even so much because of the accident or my disability that I now live with, but more just general life. I think there's always going to be ups and downs and setbacks, but something that really helps me, even to this day, but particularly in the beginning year, was when I was falling and when I hit the ground, I don't know how, but I never got knocked unconscious. And even though at the time wasn't a great thing to be wide awake for and not a great memory to have, but in hindsight, I'm actually really glad that I was awake for it, because it means that I'll forever have this crystal clear memory and knowledge of how it feels to think for certain that you're about to die. And before this, I wasn't an optimistic person. I was someone who just kind of went through the motions. And I thought, what a waste to only realize just how badly I want to live when I have 10 seconds left. And I was so mad at myself that I had wasted all of the time before that. And yeah, having that memory, even once I hit the ground and things became hard, and they were hard in the year that followed, above all, I could have that gratitude, because even though all of my emotions weren't good, I just felt so lucky that I could still feel anything at all, that I was still here. So that's something that definitely helped, just the knowledge that life is fragile and anything that I get to experience is a great day, even if it's not a good day.
What about you, Cody? I'm sure there were days when you might have thought, oh, have I made the right decision here? And the relentless laps and endurance and early starts.
Yeah, absolutely. I went through plenty of ups and downs. I still do to this day. I mean, not every day, as Emma said, is going to be a good day, but it's still sort of a great day when you realize sort of how lucky you are to be alive and to have, a moving body and a beating heart and all these things. And I feel so grateful I have the chance to sort of express myself in all these different ways all the time. And but certainly early on, there were a couple of times, I think it might have been after my very first sort of race. I'd only been training for about 4 or 5 months. I was really in no shape to go and compete, and I did, and it was absolutely horrible. And that night I seriously considered quitting. I didn't think I was gonna. I sort of question whether I was in over my own head, especially because a lot of people, you receive a lot of sort of questions and doubts and sort of cynicism from others who may think that, when you're trying to undertake something as large as I was trying to do, or chase a dream that seems so sort of big and daunting and impossible for someone who just had been out of the sport for so long, and had been doing something completely different. It's very hard to kind of, I suppose, adhere to your own self-belief and vision, and that's sort of what I had to do in those times where I was going to give it up. And I'm so glad that I did, because it was often on those right after the right on the other side of sort of those most intense or lowest moments were the breakthroughs. And they're often a lot sort of closer than you expect. And so it's really just trying to get through those and find the sort of light on the other side. Yeah,
it's hard not to get inspired, I guess, by listening to both of you speak. Em, you previously said that we don't have to go through something bad to see life in a different way, that we can learn from each other's stories. Your experience is so incredible, and you say there's elements of it that people can actually take into their own lives.
Yeah, for sure. So I feel like I grew and transformed so much from this one particular thing that happened in my life. And I just thought, like, what a shame that I had to literally plummet from the sky to realize these things. And so that's why I started sharing my story all those years ago, because I hope that people can take a little snippet without having to go through the bad thing to get these realizations. And I think as humans, we all experience the same emotions, just through different circumstances. And so although a skydiving accident or becoming paralyzed might not be a relatable thing, the emotions throughout them all are. And so I think, yeah, we can all learn from each other's stories. But as I said before, that perspective of gratitude, as well as adaptability and all the other things I had to go through, they're all things that can be applied to everyone's life, not just from falling from the sky.
For you, Cody, we could say a similar thing, pop star to high-performing athlete. What is it about what you've experienced and learnt that you think other people can take some inspiration from them to help them, I guess, change paths if they feel, you know, they may have an opportunity to build a better life in another lane?
Yeah, I think I've learned not only from my career in entertainment, but certainly from my career as well in sport and in swimming, and having sort of made the shift, that the kind of perseverance and persistence that it takes in order to sort of reach success or reach your goals in those things, and the kind of daily push you need, and I don't like the word grind. That was the only thing that came to my head, but we use it a lot in sport. Just like daily grind and committing to the grind is something that I've learned to just love and enjoy so much, and just having the opportunity to challenge myself all the time is I now find such a privilege, and I'd inspire people to, you know, if they are in I suppose a career that they're looking to make a change from, or they do have a dream that's sort of, say, larger than the space that they're in, to start taking those small little risks and watch them kind of compound as you start moving towards that greater vision you might have for yourself, or that goal you might have for yourself that possibly isn't in line with the life you're currently leading. And certainly for me, like I knew I was going to have to make a lot of sacrifices and sort of, I suppose, metaphorically, like blow up the life that I had in order to become or create the one that I wanted to have. And I often used, I think it was early on when I first made the change and sort of gave up what I was doing in order to sort of, I guess, stop going to sleep at 5 a.m. and start waking up at 5 a.m. Was to sacrifice the person you are in order to become who you want to be. And, you know, I think that it can be so rewarding when you really give it a good go. Yeah.
Yeah, and tell us how hard is it to deal with the anxiety going from the warm-up station to the starting blocks, those few minutes? It always looks very high anxiety, high stress.
Yeah, that's something I've had to learn to deal with a lot of, is just remaining calm, or as calm as you can be under pressure. And in those high pressure situations, getting up behind the blocks, especially at an international competition, can send you into a state of fight or flight, and you have to sort of learn to deal with that. And I've had the opportunity to be able to practice that a fair few times now, and it certainly helps you grow as a person. Sort of putting yourself voluntarily into those really high pressure situations can sort of teach you how to deal with so many other things in your life that I've been able to improve. Yeah.
Gemma, we've heard some great insights and advice from both our panelists. LG, as a brand, has been looking very closely at this to build this narrative into its latest campaign.
Yeah, definitely. What we've heard from both Em and Cody today is exactly why we as a brand want to extend our focus beyond just incredible products, and we do make incredible products, to being far more customer-centric and building on customer insights, their requirements, needs, challenges of everyday life. We want to become a smart life solution company where we really are focusing very much on the customer experience and the diverse life experiences that many of our customers have. For this specific campaign, we know it takes guts to be optimistic. We absolutely do. It can be difficult to believe in optimism and see that in your everyday life. There are a million reasons why it's so much easier just to continue on the path that we're on and give up and be acceptant of that path, I guess. But those who bravely choose to be optimistic, such as Em and Cody here today, can truly experience a better life. Both of them are really a testament to exactly that. And that's all we really want at the end of the day, isn't it? Just a good and happy life.
Yes, great way to wrap up our discussion. Before we take questions from the audience, would like to get a final word from the rest of our panellists. Cody, I'll start with you. What advice do you have for someone who is trying to be a brave optimist and trying to overcome something or make a change in their life?
It's a good question. One quote or saying that I like to remind myself of that I really love is don't sacrifice what you want most for what you want right now. And that, that sort of means it's important to, I guess, remember what it is you truly want as opposed to what your sort of brain or mind might be convincing yourself you want in the moment. Whether that be for you, whether it's like for me, sometimes in training, if it's really difficult, or we're going through a particularly difficult set and I'm not feeling so good, what you want the very most in the moment is to stop, and your brain and body is telling you, screaming at you to stop. But what you want most is to get that improvement and realize your sort of goals and potential as an athlete. And so reminding myself of that is good. Or whether it be, a simple weight loss goal is kind of a silly example, but like the donut might be what you want in the moment, but it might not be what you want most, which is to achieve a certain weight loss or fitness goal. So, simple sort of examples like that I think are good to remember and keep you in line with, I suppose, your purpose in trying to reach that potential you have, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you. Em?
I might share a quote too. It's a quote that I made up. Is that narcissistic? So let me tell a story. The day of my accident, I'd got to Switzerland the night before, and I told myself that the next morning I would wake up and go for a run before I went skydiving. Running was my favourite thing to do, and I knew there'd never be a more beautiful place to do it than in Switzerland. But when I woke up that morning, I was feeling lazy and couldn't be bothered, which is fine. We're allowed to be lazy sometimes, but for the sake of what happened next, it didn't feel fine. And so I told myself I'd go for a run tomorrow instead. And then flash forward to that tomorrow, and I'm laying paralysed in a hospital bed instead, being told I'd never walk again, let alone ever run again. And I was so mad at myself because I couldn't believe I had passed up the opportunity to do the thing I loved most in the whole world, and now it seemed I would never get that chance again. And I felt so much regret, and I wanted to make sure I could never forget this feeling because it felt so strong and powerful. And so I got out my phone and I wrote a letter to my future self. I wrote just 5 words: if you can, you must. And what I meant specifically was, if you can ever run again, you must. You must remember this feeling of yearning for something so badly and being physically unable to have it. And I remember going to bed that night feeling like the future wasn't just bleak, but insurmountable. And then time went by, as it always does, and I completely forgot about this note until a few years ago when I was going through my phone and found it again. And when I read the words, I thought, past Emma was so wise. Even though to this day I still can't run, and I maybe never will be able to again, but the words meant so much more than just running. When I read them again, I thought, wow, if there's something you can do and you have the desire to do it, then you must, for no other reason than the incredible and unlikely fact that you can. And we tend to think we have forever, and so we push things back for another tomorrow, which more often than not does arrive, but what if it doesn't? And I don't just mean that in the morbid sense of death or serious injury or something like that, but just that opportunities don't hang around forever. And so whatever it is for you that you want to do, that you lay awake thinking about at night, whatever it is, do it before you get the chance to ask yourself, what if? As Cody said, do it before the parachute doesn't open, something like that. Do it now, because that was my quote. If you can, you must.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Really nice.
I think we are going to throw it to the floor now. We've actually got a microphone, so if anyone has any questions, please do ask.
This one's for Cody and Em. What are the little things that make you happy in life?
Do you want to go first?
Cody?
Sure. Okay. Little things that make me simple things like reading a good book, playing guitar, watching a sunrise or sunset, going for a surf when I can. Those are some little things that I love. Eating a good meal when you're really, really hungry. Yeah.
I fully agree. It really is the little things. Like every time I'm at an airport, this is very specific, but every time I'm at an airport, I get a Krispy Kreme and it just makes me so happy. But yeah, it's so different for everyone what they enjoy. But for me, I love being outside, being in nature, hanging out with my little niece makes me the happiest in the world. Going for walks, sitting on, this is really specific too, but when I spent about a year in a wheelchair, and during that time I realized something I'd never thought about before. There's so many places a wheelchair can't get to, and so this is really bad advice, but one of my favorite things to do now is going and sitting in places where I couldn't have gone in my wheelchair. So sitting on like cliff edges and like the tops of mountains and going on the sand, all things I couldn't do in my wheelchair. It's like, yeah, I feel very lucky to do.
Any more questions?
Jim, I'm going to throw this to you. When Paul Reeves first developed Life's Good,
Yes.
there was 3 products standing on 3 pillars. One survived, and it was a LG product, and they were all washing machines.
Mm-hmm.
The transition from Life's Good, that you delivered a good product, right? Do you think the market has changed, that it's now about brand, it's about emotion and how I feel towards a brand, more so than selling the benefits of the product? The people have got to be attached to a brand they trust.
I think so. I think especially us Aussies, we love a brand and we connect with the brand. We connect with the attributes of the brand, and if they align up with our own attributes or own requirements or own thoughts. And I think that's just a very human thing to do. So for us, building and establishing a really strong brand moving forward, I mean, we have incredible products, but we really are very focused on building a very strong brand in now and in the future.
Oh, just over here.
Hi, I've got a question for you, Em. Sounds like your recovery journey was quite mentally taxing, and you kept focus on the optimism. Was there a day or a time that you can think of during that journey where things maybe didn't go the way you were expecting? Maybe you got some bad news, or you thought you could do something and then something happened and change of plans. What kind of got you back on track and staying hopeful in those times where maybe you were challenged?
Good question. Yeah, I think the hardest time for me was probably leaving hospital. So I was in hospital for 4 months, 1 month in Switzerland and then 3 months back in Australia, in Sydney actually. And during that time, I was weirdly happy. Like the doctors would come in and be like, is she okay? Because I would be that person that's gazing out a window being like, look at the bird chirping. Like, wow. I was just the biggest cliche because I felt so like this surge of thankfulness to be alive. But then when I left hospital, and another thing that helped in hospital is everything's catered to life in a wheelchair. The tables are the right height that you can wheel right underwards. The bathrooms are easy. So it was all pretty simple. And then when I got back home, it was more difficult because I was in my house that I lived in beforehand, but suddenly I couldn't reach things in cupboards that I could easily do, or I would drive past the streets that I used to run down and be like, oh wow, I can't do that anymore. And it also just really sunk in that what was happening was permanent, and it was the rest of my life that I'd be dealing with this. So I found that transition to be the hardest part. And what helped me was, again, like focusing on the perspective of the things that I could still do and all of that, but again, I don't know if my advice is good because it's very specific, but what else I did is I moved to the Gold Coast, which isn't necessary, but I just wanted that feeling of, I guess kind of like Cody said before, like a fresh start. I didn't want to be around people that saw what happened to me and pitied me because they saw the person I was before and that I couldn't do all these things that I used to be able to do. And I didn't see my accident as a negative thing at this stage because I knew so much good had come from it. So I wanted to be around new people, strangers that only saw the new me. They didn't have any old me to compare myself to. And so having that fresh start was I think, one of the best decisions I ever made. Moved up to the Gold Coast, which was great.
GC. Any other questions?
Hi, Em. This isn't a question. This is just, I just want to let you know something. I was so inspired by your book. I actually have your quote as my screensaver on my laptop, and it inspires me every day.
Oh my
So
gosh, thank you so much. That's so lovely. Thanks for reading it.
It was a great book.
Thank you.
When's the second one coming?
I know. I'm like, what else do I have to write about that's dramatic enough for a book? Yeah.
Is there any other questions? Yep, we've got one up the front.
Thank you. This question is for Cody. I would like to know how your understanding of optimism has changed throughout all your journey.
My understanding of what, sorry?
So I want to know how your understanding of optimism has changed throughout your journey.
Sure. I think my understanding of it has evolved in a way that I now understand that it sometimes can be and even has to be a choice. And, you know, there are going to be good days and bad days. And I think Em had a good perspective on it earlier, just saying like sometimes it's about shifting your perspective and seeing something negative as an opportunity or a reason to develop an amount of gratitude. And so I think my relationship with it has become a lot healthier day to day now because I understand that it is something that you have a certain amount of control over. And that isn't sort of something that comes and goes. Well, it naturally comes and goes, but I think, you know, I've been able to figure out how to control it a little more and decide be a certain way and have a way of changing perspective on, I suppose, negatives or challenges.
Thank you, mate. Well, that's it from us today. I just wanted to see if everyone could give a big round of applause for all the panellists. I'll pass back to you.
Oh, yes, thank you. I just want to say thanks again for everyone attending today.
Thanks.
Thank you.